He talking about? Who's Allah talking about? Us. You're lost. Except. So you have to have these four attributes, or you have to consider yourself lost. And you need to be found. And the only way to be found is through Allah. And that's what we do. My name is Brother Hussein. My background is I'm a practitioner in CBT therapy. And I'm big in just teaching people how to change their thoughts. Because nothing will change in your life until you change. So Allah has a formula. You want to become found, you have to have four characteristics. Can't have three, two, or one of these. You have to have all four. What does Allah say? You have to believe. That's the first thing. Everybody, there's people here who have been sick. People here have been told you need to do chemo. You have to do it or you're going. People have been told you have 6 months to live. But then when something happens, if they believe into that thought and that suggestion, it's going to be true. But what if they believed in a greater power? So every spontaneous remission, when somebody is told you have 6 months to live, and 10 years later they're still living, and they've studied these people, you know what's the first characteristic that they have to have is what? Belief. And maybe we'll have somebody share their story, at the end of this program, to share what happened when they were told they have, and how did she was able to shrink her tumor, or correct? So the first characteristic that you have to have is belief. So how is your belief system with Allah? How much do you understand Allah? How much do you only depend on Allah and not people? What happens is we love Allah, but we trust people. What should the formula be? That we love people, but trust only who? Everybody here has been betrayed at least once. We're going to talk about that imbalance. When you do become betrayed, what happens to your soul? And some of you have not recovered from your betrayal. How can I prove that? Ex-husband, what happened? He cheated on me. Do you forgive him? Yes. Well, what happened when I bring the ex-husband right next to them? How do they feel? Horrible. So that means you haven't. You still feel that betrayal. And a lot of us still feel that trauma. So the first is you have to believe. What's the next step? You got to do good deeds. When's the last time you've done a good deed and told nobody? And you felt good about it? Some of us are good deeds. That's why we're in a state of gratification. We only feel good as if we post it and talk about it. That's how you know you've become a slave to this world. What's the proof? As soon as there's a car accident, what's the first things that people do when there's a car accident? Do they videotape it or they go and help? Why do they videotape it before they help? Post it. And when they post it, how do they feel? Good or bad? Really good. Because 1,000 people liked it. What's happened is that feeling has trumped our consciousness of going to help people. We're going to talk about that today. Yes. It's fine. Yeah. But if you're only doing it for gratification, and that's where your pleasure lies, it's no longer joy, because there's a big difference between joy and pleasure. You take care of yourself? Yeah, what'd you do? I went and got my nails done. I got my hair done. That's pleasure. What's joy? Being able to sit where you're at and not feeling like you're in a rush to go somewhere. So the last time you're able to sit and just be at peace. We're going to talk about that pendulum today. So the third step is you got to advise others. So you have to believe, you have to do good, but can you only do those things? No, not now. If you need somebody who's lost, there was a brother who told me my kids were at the mosque, and this brother was doing, older brother, much older, was doing wudu, and he was putting his hands like this. He was going like that. So his two sons went and told him, the older brother, you're doing your wudu wrong. So the brother looks at him and says, who do you guys think you are telling me how to do my wudu? You're doing it wrong. And he walked out. So I said, did you train them? I said, well, what do you mean? Did you train your kids? How should I have trained them what to do? I thought they did the right thing. I said, no. Would you ever take advice from your kids? Your egos are too strong. My ego's too strong to take advice from my son, right? So how do you guide your kids? Is indirectly. So how did Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein alayhi salam do it? When they walked into the bathroom to do their wudu, there was a brother who was doing it wrong. So did they directly told him, you're doing your wudu wrong? No. What did they say? Can you tell us which one of us does our wudu better? Me or my brother? So as they're doing their wudu, he looked at it and he says, my God, I'm the one that's doing my wudu wrong. How am I going to tell you what's right or wrong? And that's the approach. You know, we all hate taking advice directly. Do you know that? Remember the last time you did something wrong and somebody gave you advice? How did that feel? It didn't make you feel good. You didn't say, oh, thank you. It hurt. It hurts because that's the body. The body rejects that. How do you know you've disassociated from the body? Is when somebody gives you advice and you do it right away because you trust them. Do you know what's the worst thing is when you marry somebody or you're close to somebody and you take their advice and now you take it blindly because you trust them. And what's the worst thing that could happen is they betray your trust. That's why the Imams, the Prophet says, it's true, be careful that your kids don't betray you. But you know what you should be more careful of? That you don't betray your children. Because they will be scarred for life with that betrayal. And we have a lot of that in our community as well. So then the fourth is, you have to do good. You have to advise others to the truth. You have to believe. But this is the hardest one. Patience. At the time of what? It's okay. It's easy to be patient now. But it's at the time of what? Anger. Somebody makes fun of you. When somebody ghosts you. Somebody hurts you. If you could have all four, then you're not lost. I consider myself lost. I haven't found myself yet. I'm still controlled by my body. Because sometimes do I become emotional? Do I become impatient? Yes. The question is, how long do we stay in that state? Or maybe before it might have been a day or 2 days. Hopefully I've gained enough wisdom to shrink in that. But if you're noticing you're having the same thoughts with the same reactions, that means you're the same person. Stop expecting things to change. But do you know if you change your thoughts, within 7 days, scientifically, your brain changes, your heart changes, your cells change. 7 days. That's why people within 7 days, sometimes they've upregulated their genes. There's the brain tumor, there it goes. But what's the characteristic that they need to have? They have to believe and submit and surrender in something bigger than themselves. When you can't and you become impatient, then it's all about you. You've gone through pain. That's not a choice, that's a trial. What's suffering is when you put the attention on who? Yourself. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Last week we spoke, and then, Brother Sam Jaffer has become like my mascot for the program. So every week he brings new guests. So today he brought a guest who he doesn't know that I've known him for about at least 20 years. His name is Hussein Berry. Let's welcome him with a large salawat. Thank you for coming. And you can thank Sam Jaffer for that greeting. Last week we talked about death. If the death angel comes to you and you say 1 more week, the death angel says, God gave you 30 years. Why didn't you prepare? Right? You can't even change the expression on your face. So then we did a meditation on death, where you had to close your eyes and envision yourself in the grave. That was interesting. You know what was really interesting about that? We had 5 people have out-of-body experiences. Now, what does that mean? It means you're not this body. There's been books written about out-of-body experiences by numerous authors, and they would study. He said this person would be in traumatic accident, and then her soul, her consciousness would be separated from the body because it would be so traumatic. Then as soon as she was about to pass away, the doctors resuscitated her. And then she told the doctors what happened, that I was above this building, and on this building, on this antenna, there's pink shoes. I was all the way above. So what did the doctors go and check? The shoes, and were they there? And was she ever notated to ever be at that hospital before? No. So how did she know? Because you're not this body. You're dimensional beings living in a dimensional world. You're not linear beings in a linear world. What I want to try to do in this discussion today is not get stuck in this physical world. I will. Salawat. Alaikum salam. One more time. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All right. What time is it? We have a lot to do. 8:30. We just started. Okay. Because I don't want to go over time with prayer. I want to try to end at 9:15, 9:30. We pray, and then we're going to have a similar meditation as we did last week. So if you want to try to become no one, no body, no time, join us for the meditation. It's a pretty cool experience. And we also do healings and so on, what we do for the community. We'll talk about those as well. So Allah says, I talked about how last week that the names of Allah, the way you execute them is you apply the verse. So Allah says, Aziz and Rahim. So Allah's, two of his name is the mighty and the merciful. So if you want Allah's might in your life and mercy, what's the clue? Because that's what the ayah, whenever you see God's names in the ayah of the Quran, execute that verse. So how do you execute God's mercy and might? What do you have to do? You got to rely. How do you have to rely on Allah? When haram is put in front of you, when there's a haram situation put in front of you, and you don't do on haram because even though you might go broke, even though you may go to jail, even though something may hurt you, but you rely on Allah, you will now execute Allah's might. How do you avoid Allah's might in your situation? Is you don't follow the Sharia. You don't follow what Allah is telling you to do. Then you will complain on the day of judgment. Allah, why didn't you help me in this situation? Well, if you would have relied on us, let me show you what would have happened. You know what's the biggest regret? Is Allah would have showed you those dimensions. This is who you would have ended up marrying. This is your life. This is the type of kids that you would have had. This is the person you would have became. All you had to do was rely on Allah. Do you know why we don't? Because we don't believe in that dimension. That if we start praying, last 3 marriages, and Allah does this to me on purpose, I think. The last 3 marriages, each couple had one common characteristic. None of them prayed. So I would give them the traditional Western advice, but what was the last advice that I gave all of them? Pray. 2 out of the 3 couples executed and started praying, waking up in the morning and praying. Guess what happened to those 2 couples? They're as happy as could be. The third one came back to me and said, we did everything. I said, did you guys start praying? I said, Allah is the creator of the universe. Every prophet before he died, he said, don't give up your prayer. What happens is in our community, if you're not known to pray, you are embarrassed. You know what the one guy told me? He says, how am I going to tell my wife that I'm going to start praying? So what do you mean? How are you going to start? I said, I think my wife's going to think that there's like a string attached, like I'm trying to get her to do something. I said, for God's sakes, first thing is pray and don't worry about what people think. Imagine if your vision goes. Could that person help you get your vision back? Yes or no? So why not pray? Imagine somebody comes and tells you you have a tumor. What's the first thing you thought about? Tawakkul on Allah. Isn't that what this is? And then what did Allah show you within a short time? What happened to your body? It shrinked. How? Because you relied. Now, if you would have relied less on Allah and more on that doctor and believed that doctor, what would have happened? You wouldn't be sitting here, most likely. You'd be back to Allah, which is okay too. It's not a bad thing. Salawat. So I was going to talk about the verses that talk about moderation. Well, if I have time, we'll come back to this at the end. So Allah says in Surah, we're going to skip. Okay, when modesty is lost more and more, it becomes easier for us to keep breaking down. So one of the ways Shaitan gets us is just stop praying on time. Then after that, stop praying Fajr. Then after that, stop praying altogether. Look at the hijab. There's an attack 100% on hijab in the community. What's the interesting thing about the headscarf and the hijab, which are 2 different things, is a woman would take off the headscarf. She says, I felt like I was forced. My husband hurt me. I felt some pain. I took off my headscarf. My question is, when they take off the headscarf, then why does everything else go too? That part I'm confused. If it's just about the scarf and showing your hair, right? Which is a thing between you and Allah. Why does everything else become a way to say, okay, it's okay for me to become indecent now? That also confuses me. So shaitan gives me in subtleties. Look, like I told you, we hate getting advice. People hate giving direct advice, especially publicly. Islamically, you're actually not supposed to do it. The Imams warned against it. You want to take away somebody from Allah? Give them public advice. It's like debates. Debates don't change anybody. Hajj Hassanin has debated atheists and Christians, and he's destroyed them. Did they become Muslims? Did they become believers in God? No. But who did he debate them for? For you. If you ever have a question about God, just YouTube Hajj Hassanin's debates. That'll make you a stronger believer than you are now. That's the first thing I did, and that was over 15 years ago, and those debates are just as strong. So here's a way of modesty. So we're going to continue on the next verse of Surah Yusuf from where we were left off last week. She said, that is the one about whom you blame me. So Zulaykha is saying, that is the one that you told me that why am I lusting over Yusuf? She didn't say he, she said that, the word that, and there's a reason. I'll get back to it. Why did she say that? What did that represent in Islam? So she looked at, she says, you think I'm bad? You don't think you do the same thing? This is the one. Look at him. He looks like an angel. Look at yourselves. You're cutting your hands. You don't think you're mesmerized? That's why in this community, should you ever judge somebody who took off the hijab or stopped praying or start doing the drugs? No. Why? Because how do you know if you were in the same situation, you wouldn't be exactly the same way? I deal with really reckless people in the community who've made reckless decisions. You know what's the first thing that I tell them? I honestly think it might be worse than you if I was in the same position. How do I know? But it's so easy to judge people. So the ayah of the Quran brings out a reality what Zulaykha did to them and said, she brought in the same conditions. She said, you try to behave any better. Did they fail the test? Yes. They all lusted over Yusuf. So then, that is one about whom you blame me. And I certainly sought to seduce him. That represents this world. We're trying to seduce this world. What did he do? But he firmly refused. If he will not do what I order him, he will surely be in prison and he will be destroyed. So she threatened him with prison. She threatened him, I'm going to slander you. I'm going to make fun of you. But his relationship, is it with the reputation of what people think of him or the relationship with Allah? We are so scared of our reputation within the community. Yes or no? And we're willing to do anything, and how crumbled we are when somebody just spreads one small rumor. So how do we make sure we don't get on that pendulum, in that tornado, in that hurricane, where it really puts our life in a spiral? Do you know if I just start throwing the ball and everybody gets the ball, but you don't, and I tell you we're going to avoid you in just part of a study, and I'm telling you we're going to avoid you on purpose. They've done studies. Even though you know it's going to be done on purpose, will you feel bad? Yeah. So even when people don't say something about you, even though it's not true, do you still feel bad? Yeah. So how do you elevate above that? So then, when the milk is splattered all over the floor and those little eyes are looking at you for your reaction, remember what really matters. So when the milk is splattered, when something doesn't go your way, how did you react the last time? Either with your kids, your husband, when there was spilled milk, have a discussion with the person next to you. How did you react? Say, that's going to be interesting. How is it going to react? Go ahead. Have that discussion. Okay. So there would have been two options. If my son spilled the milk, I could have yelled at him and say, "Why'd you spill this milk?" and let him have it for 20 minutes. Or what could I have just done? Cleaned it up. Let's say if he's under the age of 7. I'm not even allowed to yell him because I'm the fool that left the milk there out for him to play with. So I'm not even allowed to discipline him. You notice our 3, 4-year-olds, we're trying to discipline them. Saying, why would you do this? You're the one that left it out there. It's your fault. You know, in Islam, you're not even supposed to say the word no. How many times have you heard the word no before the age of 7? Probably in your upbringing. A lot. And now you're conditioned when you wanted to do something great for yourself. What did your thoughts tell you? No, because that's the program you were given up to the age of 7. Why do you think parents call them terrible twos? Because at 1 year old, kids going there, don't go there, don't touch this, no, can't go here. And now they're marrying. So now the parents saying, let's go here, no. Eat your, no. And then what happens is now we attract relationships like that. And that becomes your relationship. It's an egoic relationship. It's not a love relationship. That's why when he was thrown in prison, Zaleikha thought she could hurt him. Said, if he doesn't do what I say, I'm going to throw him in prison if he doesn't give me what I want. Show him. This is the way I'm going to show him my love. That's many of our relationships. If you don't respect me in a certain way, I'm going to take something away from you and take my love. But what she didn't know is that's an egoic relationship. What did Yusuf have? A divine relationship with Allah. So no matter what she did, he didn't care. And then when they put him in this prison, you know what he did? He reformed the prison. He reformed it. When somebody tries to take something away from you and puts you in a lower position, what did you do in that reality? You know what most people do? They complain what happened to them. What did Yusuf do? Did he complain or did he reform the prison? He reformed it. He made those slaves, those prisoners into Muslims. He changed them. If anything you want to do, my advice is watch the movie Yusuf. It's a beautiful series. So I was at the gym this past week, and there was a brother, a Muslim brother. He was doing a tricep workout. But then he was going to another machine, and he was using that machine too. A white lady comes. She had an entitlement. She goes, only take this rope, go here, and let me use this side. He's like, no, give me 10 minutes, and let me finish, because I'm using both sides because of the way I'm doing the workout. She wouldn't let him. While he's working out, she's letting him have it. What kind of person are you? I'm a woman. Why don't you allow me to use this? And I'm thinking, if she was working out and he did that to her, ya Allah. But then I said, okay, what could he have done? You know what we tried to do? We tried to give her our machine. She didn't want to take it because you couldn't move it. She wanted this machine because you could adjust it. She wouldn't. I said, here, just take ours. She wouldn't listen. What could the guy have done over that spilled milk? Just give it to her because she's hurt. She's entitled. She's always been fighting. Everything is a war to her. Give it to her. You're not going to lose. We think we're going to lose something. We're so egoic. You own nothing. Everything is Allah. So give it away. We're so scared. He wouldn't. And then they're both going. So then Allah showed me something. The guy came to us. He said, did you see what she did? And I'm just looking at him. I didn't give advice. He didn't give me permission. I didn't give him advice, or else he would have got angry at me. Then he went to 2, 3 other people. Then 5 minutes later, we're working out a different lady. We see the white lady. What is she doing? She's telling the same story. And then I go downstairs to the cafe. Who do I see half hour later? The white lady. And she's got 5 people saying the same story. And now is the story exaggerated a little bit? And I'm listening. I'm like, that part didn't happen. Where did that come from? Do you know most of the time when we recant our history and stories, 50% of it is a lie because you can't remember and you have to fill it in? So then ask yourself a question. Most people live that way. Now they have something to talk about where they could just let it go. And all we're doing is waiting for drama, because what else am I going to do when I call my friends? What else is there to talk about? There needs to be something to happen. And that's why we keep attracting these situations so we could go talk about them. Yes. Yeah. Don't you see what he did? Yeah. No, we need people to accept who we are, that what we did was the right thing. Yes. Yeah, this guy did this to me, and he wouldn't give me the machine. Yeah, you're right. I would have even done this to him. That's all we're looking for. But if that one person would have said something different, what would have happened? What my fear is, none of us want that advice, that divine advice. Why my job is easy as a counselor, when somebody sits in front of me, they're already giving me permission. I have the easiest job in the world. They have no place to go. So I don't advertise where I go. I'm the last resort guy. You got cancer, no doctor sent you home, come here. You got kicked out of house, you went to counseling, you went to detox, come here. They got no other option. It's so easy because you have to listen to me. Why? Because you've decided. And if they take my advice or don't take my advice, do I care? No, because I'm not emotionally attached. So I'm not going to make you feel guilty when you come back and you've told me you've relapsed. That's okay. Let's get 1%. We're so judgmental. All right. So the secret of the middle way, how do we get in a position that no matter what is happiness outside of us, we stay in the middle way? In the eyes of the Quran that I was going to bring out is how Allah says, stay balanced. Don't be extravagant with the way you eat, your dress, everything. Stay balanced. That's the only place to be. Anything else will cause turmoil in your life and unhappiness. Any type of imbalance. That's why those four of Wal Asr, in Surah Al Asr, those four characteristics: belief, do good, tell the truth, and be patient. If you tilt the scale on any of those, you're now stuck in the hurricane. What you want to do is to be in the eye of the hurricane. What happens in the eye of the hurricane? It's calmness. But can you ever escape the hurricane while you live on earth? Yes or no? No. So stop complaining when problems hit you. Show me one person that hasn't had a problem, betrayal. Show me. I'll say there's something wrong with that person. The Prophet, when he would see these people, he'd run away. So these people have the curse of God. They have no problems. So can you be in the eye of the hurricane while you have problems? Yes or no? Yes. And how cool would that be? But how easy is it for me to throw you in the hurricane? How easy? Just think of the last time. If you were thrown in a hurricane when the doctor told you you have this tumor that's going to kill you, and you decided to go in the hurricane because of those thoughts, you wouldn't be sitting here today. But you decided to stay in the eye of the hurricane. That's called tawakkul. You cannot have tawakkul unless you have tafakkur. What does tafakkur mean? Reflect. You reflect about yourself. That's why you're here sitting and you say, what's one habit I could change? Then I could rely on Allah so I could have Allah's might and mercy. Tawakkul only comes from tafakkur, and then you get that eye of the Quran. So you have to reflect in order to rely on Allah. And then when you rely on Allah, you get Allah's might and mercy in your life. Repeat what I just said to you to the person next to you. Go. Did you get it? Tell the person next to you. He'll tell you. Sister Huda, I don't see you repeating. Tell Sister Gina. هذا هي. And all that we're trying to tell people is give it a try. 7 days, a week, 40 days. Give it a try. A brother said yesterday, what can I do? Give me one thing to remove this curse on me. I feel like I have somebody's pain in me. You know what I told him? First start with 1 day where you don't sin. Just spend 1 day, you say, Allah, I'm not going to sin today. I'm not going to look at that woman that walks by me. I'm not going to get my two looks. I'm not going to do any of that. Right? Just come. I'm not going to say. I'm not going to tell you where to go to see. But just spend a day where you don't sin. Don't say a swear word. Do your prayers. Don't backbite. Just spend a day. Then try to spend a week. Then do it for 40 days. Watch how your whole universe changes. As soon as you stop sinning, the angels now have been accepted to come to you. They make the changes for you. It's not for you to do. Do you know what's our problem? You know why we don't do that? We don't believe in it. And we'd rather fulfill this body and make it happy because we get a little bit of pleasure, not joy. And thus the addictions come in our lives. Yes or no? Yes. All right. So the chapter explains that the secret of the middle way lies in the ability to help individuals find harmony and balance in their lives. By avoiding extremes and embracing moderation, one can attain inner peace, wisdom, and happiness. That's it. What's the most loving thing you want in your life is peace. That's it. Why do people work? They spend 30 years being salary slaves with the hope of becoming retired and having what? Peace. My question to them is, why are you waiting 30 years to become a slave? Why not find your peace now? And watch how Allah gives you abundance instead of that job that you're going through. And He opens up doors. We've become, if you study people like Rockefeller and how he's the one that created this whole schooling system. Because what did he say? I don't want what? Thinkers. I need workers. Some of us become salary slaves to the point we also encourage our kids to become salary slaves. And we forget it's not you, the boss that's paying you. Who's paying you? Allah. But we don't rely on who? Bad joke? Oh, your work. No, it's Allah. Okay. So Yusuf experienced, so going back to the verse, there's two types of jealousy. You know what? I'm going to skip this for next week. If I have time, I'm going to come back to this. Because I wanted to talk about the two aspects of jealousy, but we'll come back. There's a feminine and a masculine. But even there is a brother, and I'll share this, but please don't lose sight of what I'm about to say. The brother married somebody, and he told me his wife is very dominant. She tells him, she's like, wears the pants in the house. So I'm not just saying, some instances, if they have greater wisdom, follow them. But this is what I told him. I told him not in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense, from the Islamic point of view, you're in a homosexual relationship. Because now when men take women's roles, or women now take men's roles, and now they're in these types of relationships, from the spiritual side, it's very hard to connect to Allah because now you're in like a homosexual relationship, our scholars say. So that's why you want to make sure your priorities are straight and you know what to look for. Are we going to talk about the end of the lecture what you should be looking for in a relationship? Yes. Or sometimes we could get into things and our body could trick us because what our society is telling you what you should look for. And it's all lies. So we'll come back. So, true or false? There are two extremes of the pendulum, the yin and the yang, expansion and contraction, non-doing and doing. Everything has two extremes. Everything is gradations of the pendulum swing. If you go to the extremes, you can't survive. True or false? If you go into the extreme of anything, can you survive? No. The Prophet ﷺ came to the mosque. He saw all these people every day praying, fasting, reading Quran. He would come again. They were there. He'd come again. They were in the mosque. He was like, who's taking care of your families? He says, our brothers and our other family members. He says, go back, for you are a burden to society and your brothers are better than you. Because what do? Even reading the Quran, can you take it to the extreme? Even praying, you notice there's extremes in everything that you could do. So, relationships. Do you like being close to another person? Yes or no? Yeah. What's the most valuable thing in our lives? Relationships. You have a good life, that means you have a good relationship. You have a good marriage, it means you're looking forward for your husband coming home. The best relationship to have is with who first? Allah. Then Allah brings you people. But if you did an egoic relationship, those relationships hurt you, and then you're so happy when he leaves the house, and you're so sad when he comes home. That's an egoic relationship that you need to change. So, how about being so close that you're never apart? How would that feel? It's weird. Clingy. Do we have a lot of that going now in the community? Have I been seeing that in the counseling sessions? What did you do? Who did you look at? What did you speak to? Why'd you pick up the phone? You hung up with me to go talk to her? Yeah, honey, it was about work. No. Well, you become very clingy. You eat every meal together. You go everywhere together. You do everything together. When you talk on the phone, you always use a speakerphone so that both of you could partake in every conversation. You keep her in your earpiece, so everywhere you go, she's there with you. How's that relationship? You want to be so close that you're the same person. How long do you think that would last? So you notice, you could be close to somebody, right? You can say, I want to be close to you, but can you be extreme in there? Yes. You can say, I want to be warm, I'm cold, but if I make it too hot, could it be extreme? Yes, everything has extremes. So from science, we know that if you pull a pendulum 30 degrees to the right, it'll spring back until it's 30 degrees to the left. If I take a bowling ball from here and I swing it all the way there, and now it's coming back, and I leave the bowl, I start from the bowling ball here, will it hit my face? No, it'll come right here. On a pendulum, it'll be exactly right here. Unless you move forward, you'll get hit. But so that pendulum will go. That's why no one ever gets away with anything ever. Why? You throw an extreme out there, you steal, lie, cheat anybody or yourself, it'll come back and hit you. It's called karma. We believe in that in Islam. And Allah says in the Quran, we do that to teach you a lesson. So you can't escape it. You hurt somebody, you are going to get hurt because it's going to come back and slingshot towards you. There's nothing you could do to ever get away with that. Ever. It's not going to. Look at the people within the pharmacies. They went extremes. They're making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. Then they felt they could steal from the insurance, overbill. And what do? They went from making $300,000 to stealing $2 to $3 million a year. Right? What happens? When they get caught, how embarrassing is that? But they really think it wasn't going to slingshot back at them. So that's why when you throw an extreme out there in your life, you watch something haram, you say something haram, you do, just anticipate the problem when that's done unto you. How different would your life be if somebody taught you, think about your sins this way? Now you have something to look forward to in a positive way when you resist your friends. Because why? Because that's what our traditions tell us of the Prophet, not what our friends tell us or anybody else. It's what our traditions tell us. Be careful. Be aware. It's going to come back and hit you. Haven't we all, including myself, been taught that lesson? When we tried to get away with something, what happened? It came right back. And how did that feel? And when was it the worst? Is when we did it to our mothers as teenagers. When we tried to sidestep. And how did that feel when our mom found out? My most painful moments in my life are those moments. But it changed me to become better. A little bit better. If you've been starving for days and somebody puts food in front of you, would you be polite while you're eating and be slow? Yes or no? You didn't eat for a week and we put food in front of you. Are you going to be polite and say, would you want some? Brother, you ever want to really go through pain? Starve. Where you haven't had food and water? Oof, it's the most painful thing you could do to the human body. It's the most painful thing. Talk about death. It's the worst death is when somebody starves. In Iran, they starved 11 million people. 11 million during World War I. We don't talk about that. The worst. It's the cruelest way to die. So, would you be polite while you're eating? No. You will shove the food into your mouth like an animal. The degree to which you'll act like an animal is the exact degree to which you are starved enough to bring up your animal instincts. So I don't want you to miss this point. Let's say I'm resisting food and I'm trying to lose weight and I'm being extreme about it. Will I relapse? Yes or no? Yes. That's why those extreme 1 week diets, do they work? No. How do those relapse go? They go just as bad as the extreme of trying to avoid the food. So you notice anything that you do in the extreme to try to change, eventually that's going to fling right back at you. Does that make sense? So those ways, those quick fixes that we see every year somebody trying to sell, do they work? No. So you must take a closer look at what lies between the two extremes. Because neither can last. There's nothing in your life extreme that could last. If you're lying, stealing, cheating, doing anything in a negative way, it's not going to last. How long can a pendulum stay at the outermost position? So when the pendulum swings, how long can it stay at the outermost position when it swings? Let's say if I throw a pendulum or a bowling ball on the other side with a rope, how long will it last on the other side? How long? Less a second. So, just for a moment, correct? How long can the pendulum stay at the outermost position, the other position? Just a moment. It could only remain for a moment. How long can the pendulum stay at rest? Forever. Where do you want to stay? At rest. But do you notice we're doing things in the extreme and we're asking why we didn't have our peace? Look at what they do to high school students. What's a shame? Senior vacation. What's it called? Spring break. Go to Cancun without who? Parents. Are you talking about extreme? Go to a different country where everything is allowed and expose yourself for that for a week where there's no parents. You know how many kids in our community, when they go and do that for a week, how do they come back? Different. Horrible. And then they can't wait, and their whole life is again for that moment. And now they're 40, 50 years old, still chasing that moment. Why? Because the parents didn't know. They think they were doing an okay thing, and they were trusting their friends. No, it's not about that. It's the environment. Now you swung something, it's going to swing back and hit them hard. That's why when you get to know somebody, should you know about their past? Absolutely. And you should know if they have this past. Have they overcome it? You should figure that out, or else it will come in your relationships. It can remain there forever because there is no force moving it out of balance. Stay in peace. There's nothing going to move you. It's only your thoughts. So what are your extremes? What are your extremes that take you away from peace? Thinking. God, I hope she's not watching. My wife, she called, she just had hip surgery. She's an Olympic lifter. She lifts really heavy weight. She messed up her hip because it was a genetic issue from childhood. The lifting, made it a little bit worse, so she had to have surgery. She's out for I'm mom and dad for the next, for 3 months total. Oh, I'm exhausted. Okay, God, the moms are the toughest jobs. And then if you're a mom and a teacher, ya Allah, that's the most stressful job in America. Okay. So she called a physical therapist and she's like, well, I know you've been coming to me, but I don't take your insurance anymore. The secretary is saying that. So she hangs up and she's telling me, no, there's something about, I'm going to see if they're being raised. I'm going to have somebody call to see if that's true. Blah, blah, blah. So what if it is true? Ask Allah to show you a sign that it's true. So then she texted her therapist because maybe she thought her therapist didn't want to see her anymore. And what did the therapist say? The therapist says, oh my God, no, don't worry. We're going to take care of it. But before she texted her therapist, how miserable was she for the next 24 hours? Her whole mood was changed because she thought somebody was against her. What did she do? She went into the storm. And it wasn't even true. So yes, your thoughts are the most addictive thing and the most dangerous thing. The only reason why we get put into extremes is because what? Of our what? Extremes. Our thoughts. Should you start thinking about what you think about? Yeah. Say, why not just let this part go? So when somebody betrays you, they're going in the hurricane. They're trying to pull you in that hurricane. Are you going to allow it? When the body comes and whispers in your ear, do this cigarette, smoke this drug, are you going to allow it? Are you going to listen to it? Are you going to go into those extremes? So the question is now, how do you know if you're in those extremes? Let's talk about it. When you lack intelligence or excessive with intelligence, you're in the extremes. When you lack anger or excessive with anger, you're in the extremes. When you lack desire, excessive with desire, you're in the extreme. When you lacking imagination, excessive with your imagination, you're in the extremes. Now you have to look at this chart and say, where am I at in my life and where do I need to be balanced? The only place to not be lost is you have to be all four here. So if by looking at the bottom of these, if you lack intelligence, what are you? Stupid. Our scholars say, they use a nicer word, but they just call it ignorance. If you're excessive with your intelligence, which one out of these? How about this? I'm going to give you 2 minutes, a minute. Talk to the person next to you and try to fill in the gaps with these. Go. We'll see how close you got. Go. So we gave you the first one. This one, lacking intelligence, is stupidity. It's there. So try to fill it in. Go. See if you can guess it. We'll give you 30 more seconds. We'll see how you did. Oh, sorry. Because they keep yelling at me. I never say still for the camera, so. Whose first time seeing this would like to give it a shot? Who thinks they have it? Anybody want to give it a chance? Or just do it as a group? All right, nobody? All right, here we go. All right. When you lack, what's your name? Jenna. When you lack intelligence, what are you? Stupid. When you're excessive with your intelligence. Good, try, but not there. When you try to steal the teacher's exam, you're using your intelligence to be what? Sneaky, sly. When you're balanced with your intelligence, what are you? Wisdom. When you want to get married, who should you marry? A what? Not somebody who prays, wears hijab, none of that first. What's the first criteria? Do not marry a stupid person. You end up not only stupid, you could end up in hell because you follow them and they end up making you do really dumb things. That's why, should you ever start talking to somebody behind your parents' back and be sneaky? No. What does society say? Dearborn High, Fortson, Crestwood, U of M Dearborn, Ann Arbor, Wayne State, all of them are in relationships. How many of them their parents know? Very little. Why? It's accepted to be sneaky. Oh, that's my mom. She'll never understand. That's a problem in itself. And how many of those relationships are getting destroyed and hurt? How many men are taking advantage of those women? Because if he's willing to be sneaky behind his mom's back, you don't think he's going to be sneaky with you? What? You notice now that pretty girl don't look so pretty anymore. There's people in here that are going through betrayal. Talk to them. They're going through pain that's unimaginable. It's not worth it. Stay away from sneaky people. If they're sneaky, even at the with a waiter or a restaurant, even they steal a little bit and they're okay with it, run. Muhammad Ali, the boxer, he said, pay attention how the person treats the waiter. If they're harsh to the waiter, that's how they're going to treat you. See how they treat the poor. Do they dismiss them? Power of anger. Ah! Hussein Barry didn't even move. I'm impressed. MashaAllah. So Hussein, you notice, what did everybody get when I did that? Most people, they got scared. So when you're lacking anger, Hussein, what are you? You are coward. You notice that same feeling happens when somebody's getting robbed or somebody bad happens or there's an injustice to happen. What do? We get what? Imagine if we're watching Batman, he looks at Joker, so that's too scary. Movie's over and he runs away. How would you feel? You would say he's a what? A coward. Do you know that's how we are with sin? The angels will say, what a coward you were. You didn't walk away from this. Look, if you'd be embarrassed even watching a movie like that, imagine the movie of yourself that you didn't walk away from sin. Said, what a coward you are. So when you're lacking anger, what are you? Coward. When you're excessive with your anger, you get cut off, you want to beep at the guy. Somebody hurts you, you want to kick them and talk back. What are you? Foolish and reckless. Somebody plays basketball, you want to shoot him because he crossed you over. We used to have a friend like that. We couldn't take him anywhere. Anybody looked at him the wrong way, they're going to get beat up. So he used his anger to be what? Reckless. So imagine Batman now is going against Joker, but he's cruel in the way he kills him. Think about the way Imam Hussein did. Think about Imam Ali alayhi salam. He was struck by the sword. What did he say? Be just with him. Give him milk. Loosen and give him the same strike he gave me. But be just. So when you are balanced with anger, what are you considered? Not just. Not self-control. Courage. You're courageous. You got angry and you didn't act on it. You got angry and you did act on it because it was the time. Yes or no? Yes. You have to have courage to be both. When you're lacking desire, you ever see the guy who does nothing? Like nothing. Doesn't want to go to school. He just stays at home all day. Mom spoils him. Does nothing. You're like, just go. Even if you went and did something, anything, they do nothing. What do we call those people? Lazy. When you're excessive with your desire, greedy. And when you're balanced with your desire, what are you? Modest. You notice now your definition of modesty has just changed. True modesty is when you're balanced with desires. Because you could wear hijab and be very immodest. Yes or no? You could pray 5 times a day and be extremely immodest. So where's your pendulum? The last one, imagination. I give you an imagination and said, let's go rob the school. And you listen to me. That means he's what to me? What word? Submissive. We've all been submissive to our friends at one point of our life. Take this pill. Try this gummy. Do something. Watch this. And our imagination now is their imagination. When you're excessive with your imagination, what are you? Cruel. I'm going to use my imagination for a way to manipulate my parents. People that are on drugs, that can't get it anymore. Where does their imagination goes where does their heart go? Robbing people. So, how do you know where your heart is? This is the test. Just close your eyes right before you go to sleep and see where your heart wanders. See where your mind wanders. That's where your heart is. Is it to manipulate people, hurt people, or to do something greater than yourselves? It's a simple practice. Right when you wake up, right when you go to sleep, do it for the last 10 minutes. Don't you want to know where your heart is with Allah? Yes or no? What do we do right when we wake up? We check our what? And we go to sleep with our phones under where? Pillow. Half of you sleep. Raise your hand if you sleep with your phone under your pillow. Oh God. Some of you are not being honest. Right? We got only a quarter. Usually the statistics show it's half. By the way, it's really bad for your brain when you do that. Okay. So this is so now I want you to have a conversation with the person next to you. Where are you excessive with in terms of lacking or excess? Where is your pendulum? Do you feel you're lacking knowledge? So what are you going to do about it? Then have the conversation with the person next to you. And if you're alone, write it down. How am I going to have these four? Do you want to get married? You know what you do? You write down, I want somebody that's wise, somebody who's got courage, somebody who's self control, somebody who's just. You write it down. Then you look at it and you say, how much are my those qualities today? Where did I fall from grace? Where was I lacking or excessive? Do that for 40 days, your whole life changes. Brothers and sisters, it's not me telling you. It's our traditions from the Prophet ﷺ. These are where we're getting this from. And if anybody thinks they're all four with all four of the powers, you're mistaken. That's true ignorance. So we all have something to improve. Say, how am I going to become wiser? How am I going to become more courageous? Is it courageous when my friends are doing something wrong? Am I going to speak up? Or am I going to be more courageous when I'm committing sin? Am I going to speak up? Imagine if our community just embodied knowing this and saying, can you be a little bit wise for your dunya and akhirah? How much better our community is. Never scale. Ever. They've never thought that if I'm hurting her, I'm actually hurting myself. I've tipped the scale. Then they ask, why am I attracting this type of business, this type of job? Why did my blessings become a curse? You know, you could be blessed with a great voice. How do you turn it into a curse? If you use it for haram. You've all been blessed with something. How do you make that blessing manifest not only in this world and the next? Is you have to have these four. So have that conversation with the person next to you. How are you going to be more balanced? And which one are you going to pay attention? You're going to be a little bit, at least 1% better. Have that conversation. Humble yourself and do it. Go ahead. So some people saying they're all four in extreme. Pick one and say, I'm going to improve on this one. And we're usually all four too, so you're being very honest. Should we be extremely ambitious? Yes. But do you need to exhibit self-control? Yes. You were extremely ambitious, believing Allah is going to get rid of this tumor, but you had self-control. You were wise. You were courageous. And did you use your imagination and close your eyes and tell your body how it's going to feel when this tumor is gone? Yes or no? That's called being grateful. How? How are you grateful for something that hasn't happened yet? body doesn't know that. So you have more tawakkul than probably anybody here, next to Sister Huda. Because when most of us, if I was told you have a tumor, how are you going to behave? That's why these are embodiments of truth. I'd rather have conversations with her and Sister Huda than with any famous athlete, because they're going to show you where tawakkul is. Famous scholars would come, they would see Christian ladies. They'd see the way they act, say, that's a follower of Imam Ali alayhi salam. You think just because you're born into the Muslim faith, that you're going to die into the Muslim? What did Yusuf say? He says, I hope to die a Muslim. How are you going to die a Muslim? You have to have all four. Or the grave will be a problem. That could be a purified place to get you balance. So your body, the new body, could be ready for paradise. Otherwise, it's going to have to go through some things. I say, allow that storm around you, be in it, but don't play with it. Let it go. So as soon as somebody tries to take you to the extreme, where your wife annoys you, your kids annoy you, your boss annoys you, something annoys you, try to stay in the storm. The storm is there, but what does Allah promise about that storm? It's going to go. Promise, 40 days, it's going to go. New storm will come, but that one will go. Think of all the things you were worried about 2 years ago, that you worried about every day for 3 months. Every day. Do you even think about it now? See, remember that? You were about to die. You couldn't believe your son. Look at your son now. He's married with kids. Did you? That's why let it pass. How? Don't be the pendulum. Stay centered. What's my biggest struggle is that somebody tries to betray me. When jealousy comes, look, I'm in the pulpit. I get the weirdest things people come and tell me. The oddest, and it used to affect me. It took me about 7 years of practice where I didn't get thrown in a hurricane now. I just don't care. But it took me a lot of practice. Now I'm trying to teach it. So what I want you to do now is have the conversation. How are you going to behave a little bit differently the next time you throw yourself or somebody tries to throw you in a hurricane? If you have a business, your workers, your employees, your customers, we're all suffering from the same thing. What are you going to do a little bit differently? Just let that storm pass. If that guy would have just given that lady that machine at Lifetime, how do you think he felt at night when he went to sleep after telling that story probably 18 times? Exhausted. How would he have felt if he would have just let it go and stay in the eye of the storm? Peace. That's the teachings of Ahl Bayt. That's why nobody suffered more than Ahl Bayt. Nobody was put through more pain. But where did they stay all the time? In the present. Have you ever tried to teach a lesson to somebody when they're angry? Try to talk to your dad or mom when they're angry. Go. All you want you to do is just go to them and say, calm down. Oh my God. You know what's worse? We do that with our kids. Calm down. You try to calm down when you're angry. What should you do Islamically? Let it go. Then the next day you go up to her. No, I apologize. Maybe you're having a bad day. Oh yeah, I was having a bad day. I just was at the doctor and I was told that I have a sickness and I was taking it out on you. I'm sorry. How does Allah show you to get that conversation every time? Is when you let it go. I promise you, the rebound the next day, do it with your wife. Soon as you want to respond to your wife in a negative way, or your sister or your brother, wait till your next day and have a conscious discussion. This is the way you made me feel. See how they react a little bit differently. How do most of us react in the hurricane? Good luck with that. How much of our community would change if we just behave this way? We're in extremes. Look, God, look at the extremes. They've done the science, the most toxic thing. And I'm ashamed to say this. I even now have cousins that are buying marijuana shops to grow marijuana and sell it, and they've been told, well, it's only for medical, but they know they're not selling it only for medical reasons. And the most toxic thing to the brain is what? Second most toxic, marijuana. But nobody talks about it. Why? They're living in a world of extremes. Allah says, look at the story of Prophet Yusuf. He was told to go to this extreme with this woman. He says, I prefer prison. What's the prison? Prefer silence and solitude, better than be around people who take you away from Allah. Then what Allah does, like He did for Prophet Yusuf, He raises him. And look what He made him do. I promise you, if you do this for 40 days, Allah will raise you. Don't live in extremes. And if you're living in a balanced life and people are telling you you're extreme, you know you're doing the work right. Did they tell the Prophet he was extreme? Did they tell Mother Teresa she's extreme? Did they tell Malcolm X she was extreme? You know what's sad? I'm watching this Tupac documentary. This person's wisdom was profound. But where did they get him? They got him on sin. They said, we're going to manipulate you. You're not going to be somebody who leads society. Because he could have really he could have been the next Malcolm X. He was that wise. I was blown away. But then they destroyed him. They polluted his soul. To the point he almost wanted to commit suicide. When they brought a case against him that he did haram to a woman in which he did it, he said, my own people betrayed me. I'm about to kill myself. And he almost tried. So don't live in extremes. Trust Allah, have tawakkul. And when you do, even that doctor will come and look at you and say, what did you do? Where did the tumor go? Well, whatever you did, keep going. And that's what we're about. A brother comes and wants to do these clips, these short clips of our healings and our other things that we do, because our testimonials are pretty crazy. From the out of body to the healings that we do, to the mystical moments, to the shared meditations where people have the same visions when they close their eyes. Well, I'm even blown away. Somebody would have told me even a year ago that these meditations would have been happening at these events, these types of responses. I would have been blown away. But the problem is when you put this out in the public, you get two types of responses. And I don't know if I'm ready yet to hold that weight. But trust me, I believe more in what you did than anything else in its physical reality. So my advice to everybody here, take one thing, ask Allah, I'm not going to be extreme anymore, but show me a sign that it's working. Allah showed you a sign. She's living testimony to it. So what I wanted her to do is just share a few words of your experience and have tawakkul. No, you could do it. I wanted to do it. I told you I'd rather have a conversation with you than Stephen Curry, LeBron James, all of them put together. So she's the embodiment of truth. So let's welcome her with a large salawat, and we'll end. Would you like to stand up?
Okay.
Okay.
I love you. You
Come
can do
with
it.
me.
You can do it.
You go up with her.
Okay. Don't be scared.
English Arabic mixed up.
It's
يعني
okay.
ما بحكي لا عربي منيح ولا انجليزي منيح.
No, you stand with her.
Oh my
There you go.
goodness. Okay.
There you go.
Hi.
Don't be nervous. I'm more nervous.
Diana is my husband's ex-wife. We're
So,
raised-
so she's my son's stepmom, but she's my best
Wait,
friend.
your husband's ex-wife.
yes.
Wow. You talk about having tawakkul. Did she have to forgive Allah for this to happen? Did Allah allow it to happen when she forgave? 100%, or else this is impossible. Look at the power of forgiveness. Go ahead.
So من سنتين صار عندي وجع بظهري.
So her back was hurting for a couple of years.
Yes. Went to the hospital. I
Don't
found
be
out.
nervous. You got it.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I found out I have cancer, and it was stage 4. It was the size of a football. And my stomach's like having a baby. So doctor
That
said,
happened probably through stress.
yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
And your thoughts make you sick.
Very sick.
Yes. Because if I were to ask her, before you got that tumor, how was your life? She would say, I went through this, I went through this, and I went through this. Yes?
Yes.
By the way, this is the first time we ever met.
Yes. from the hospital, they say, "Are you ready for a surgery?" I say, "Yes, I'm ready."
Write your will.
توكلت على Allah. And I went, and my husband was like, "Ooh."
More,
I was like,
more scared than
yes.
anybody.
I said, I'm ready. Alhamdulillah, I did the first surgery. Everything was perfect. A year and a half later, it came back in a different spot. I was ready too. So now it's the third time I have it around my lungs.
So,
The-
so 6 nodules of cancer in her diaphragm.
Yes. They want to do chemo. And I said, no, not this time. I'm ready. Atawakkal ala Allah. I'm shaking. I start reading a lot of Quran. I don't
Remember,
want
she's already gone through chemo twice. And
The
you-
surgeries.
You know what it does to you, even at a surface level. So the third time she was like, I'm tired.
yes.
Go ahead.
So actually, she never did chemo.
I
She
did
just
chemo.
never did chemo.
Okay.
Only 2 surgeries.
Yes.
So,
she did
yeah.
Big surgery.
So this third time, she said, we talked about it. She said no chemo. So she started doing more reading of Quran, and I came in and I said, you need to live in a manner of love and joy and light and balance and combine everything together and the will of God. And so she had a CT scan scheduled for a few weeks back. She didn't go to that. She said, I have to wait. It's not the right time now. So she just went and did it yesterday.
And it's shrink.
And they shrunk.
Shrunk.
Salawat.
Alhamdulillah.
Now, the doctor tells you you have something. I know chemo that saves people's lives. So we have, remember, there's even extremes on that. We're not saying not to do that. But what I am saying is whatever somebody tells you, don't be thrown in the hurricane. Even if they tell you you have 2 weeks to live. Don't go into extremes. And there's tens of thousands of testimonials of people that live this life that you could just YouTube.
Yes.
And they all share the same story. Their belief in Allah was stronger than any suggestion that somebody told them. That's why I'd rather have a conversation with her and how she did it. Why? Because she looks just like us, doesn't she? Yes or no? So if it's possible for her to change her life, is it possible for you?
Yes.
And that is testimonial. That's why we have testimony. Now create the testimony in your own life and say, Allah, if you change her environment, change mine. I'm going to be balanced like her.
Yes.
That's the 4-minute mile. Salawat.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You did good.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you. If you'd like to be added to the WhatsApp group, we have about 2 or 3 sessions left. We're going to continue these conversations. And every week there's a little little bit different thing that you could apply to your life. And all it is consciously this was good. But you have to leave here and say, what's one habit I'm going to change to become more balanced? I don't care if you're young or old. Change it and then your life will change. But don't expect anything to change unless you embody that change, just like this sister did. What time is it? 9:30. So we'll do prayer downstairs. Come back up. We'll have food. Come back up for the meditation. Those that are joining 10:10. Those on YouTube, go on the WhatsApp group. Join the Zoom link. We'll have that ready at 10:10. We'll do the meditation at 10:10, inshallah. Thank you, everybody.